Earlier this year, I stood up on the floor and I talked about an individual. His name was Dion Watts, who was having a mental health incident and subsequently lost his life after interactions with law enforcement. I talked about how I filed a Senate Concurrent Resolution 110 to establish a mental health alternative community response model task force. This past weekend in Jefferson County, in Louisville, there's a young lady, Katelyn Hall, who her family called LMPD, or called our emergency folks, because she was having a mental health crisis. And she was at home with her family, and from my understanding, I don't have all the details, but just what has been out in the media, law enforcement went to the home. Katelyn was locked in the bathroom, threatening to harm herself. And once law enforcement opened the door, allegedly she had a sharp object, and law enforcement ended up shooting some rounds and took the life of Katelyn Hall. In 2023, November 2023, there was a young man named Desman LaDuke, who was in Jessamine County at the time, that his family got a call from his girlfriend that he was having a mental health crisis, and his family called law enforcement and said, "We are on our way, but he's having a mental health crisis. He is threatening to take his own life, but we are on our way." And the family got to the scene. They talked to emergency management and law enforcement on the scene and attempted to help talk Desmond down and to preserve his life. And I don't know all the details of that situation either, but the situation ended up with law enforcement taking the life of Desmond LaDuke. I stand here to talk about these three lives, not only those three lives, but the families, but also our law enforcement and our emergency management folks who have to respond to these calls and these situations. And since I filed this bill, Mr. President, I have had calls from jailers, I have had calls from law enforcement across the state thanking me for filing the resolution. And the reason why they were thanking me was because they said to me, "Senator, we do not want to respond to those mental health calls. We are not adequately trained to respond to those calls. We will when we try our best, but there has to be an alternative way." I know that we are at the last days of this legislative session. We've got 3 more days, and there's going to be a lot of sitting around. There's going to be a lot of talking and bargaining. There's going to be a lot of trying to shake money from trees. There's just going to be a lot of things going on. But I asked leadership from my side, and I asked leadership from the other side, and our folks who sit on health services, our folks who support law enforcement. I asked this whole body to really think about what it is that we can do as a body to deal with the mental health crisis that we're having in our communities, and ensuring that our law enforcement has the things that they need to protect themselves and the community. And so I know that we all have different things that we come up with and different ideas, but I am asking you all, almost to a point of begging this body, that we act upon Senate Concurrent Resolution 110 to create a task force so we can look at alternative actions this summer to ensure that when our law enforcement are responding, or when families are reaching out, calling our 988 number or other emergency numbers, that we figure out the best way to respond to these calls to ensure not only the families and the individuals who are calling are safe, but also that our law enforcement are safe. Thank you, Mr. President.